No one remembers, but at a point, Viva Piñata was called Microsoft's most important franchise in their portfolio. It had everything. Beautiful graphics, adorable characters, smooth gameplay, relaxing music, favorable reviews.
Oh, here we go.
But it just wasn't enough. As for what went wrong, let's start at the beginning. Rare's director, Tim Stamper, came up with the garden game idea in 2002. The studio had previously worked with Nintendo. While the development costs increased significantly, their capital did not. Therefore Rare looked for potential buyers. And fast forward a couple of months, Microsoft bought them. The development started under codename Pocket. The reason why is because the project was supposed to be released on Microsoft's shrunk-down PC device called Pocket PC. As the project progressed and new ideas came up, the development went onto the OG Xbox, then onto the 360. This move allowed the team to create a more visually appealing game without worrying about hardware limitations. I'm glad it was released on the 360. The graphics were really next-gen at the time, and honestly, it still holds up well after 16 years. The same can be said about the music, which is really relaxing and also playful. It's hard to argue against that this game was an audio-visual masterpiece. Viva Piñata was supposed to be more than just a single game. Nothing proves it better than Microsoft's actions. They agreed with 4Kids TV to make a cartoon sequel before the game's release, and of course, to handle merchandising. In Viva Piñata, the player is handed a garden in poor condition on the Piñata Island. The first character we're introduced is Leafos. She's basically a walking encyclopedia, writing down everything about the garden, the piñatas, our achievements, literally everything. In a short tutorial section, she teaches us how to use gardening tools, such as a rusty watering can, a surface packet with grass, and of course, the mighty shovel. I'm sorry. Oops.
If you try to hit me once more, I shall teach you a lesson.
Sure.
Let's see how you get on without your shovel for a while.
What? I said I'm sorry, you bitch. With the help of these tools, we shape our garden. Thus it becomes more and more habitable. The better it gets, the more piñatas it attracts. Each little piñata has their own unique requirements to fulfill, starting from their first appearance till they become residents. When they are settled, they turn from monochrome to colorful. But it doesn't stop there. If we have two piñatas from the same species, we can build a home for them, eventually unlocking the option to mate them. Nah, not like that. The mating starts with the romance dance. Then we have to complete a maze minigame, only to witness some really traumatizing footage. Watch it at your own risk. It gets funnier when you realize that all of the piñata noises were made in-house by Rare. When the romance ends, it results in an egg delivered by a stork, sorta. The egg hatches, and we get a new addition to the ecosystem. It may look simple, but it can get hectic easily, especially when multiple piñatas arrive at the same time, and it either ends in a Pokemon battle or they start to eat each other. As a proactive measure, we can always rely on the shovel. Each species can evolve into multiple variants, and there is also crossbreeding, but we don't talk about that. Piñatas can also fall ill if they consume sour candies. Whenever it happens, we either call the dog to patch them up, or we simply put them out of their misery. I mean, come on. It's still better than letting them suffer, right? Burn. If we choose not to act, or we are unable to, they're either gonna suffer for eternity, or get caught by this creepy fella, the Stardust. His purpose is to kill any sick piñatas, which can be used for our own advantage. Sour candies are dropped by Professor Pester's minions, sour piñatas, and ruffians. Professor Pester is the main antagonist, whose only mission is to destroy our property and eat our piñatas, while the sour piñatas can be dealt with pretty easily by turning them into residents. The Prof and the ruffians are just a pain in the ass. There are a couple of helpers on our side too. A postwoman, a builder, a tinker, shopkeepers, the previously mentioned duck, and even a beggar.
Could you spare a few coins to help me get back on my feet?
They can be commissioned with simple tasks to make our life easier. As we progress, we unlock story chapters in the journal. There are 11 of them in total. The story revolves around a dude named Jadenero. The garden we started on used to be his, and according to himself, he was the best gardener on the island.
I am the best gardener on Piñata Island.
He met his wife. They got married, had 4 children: Stardos, Lephos, Storkos, and Cedos. Since Jadenero's wife was working on a ship, he needed someone to help around the garden, a student with potential, so he hired a guy named Lester. Unfortunately, Lester turned out to be a gigantic asshole. First, he tricked Jadenero to go on a trip to capture the legendary Dragon Ash Piñata. Lester then created the sour candies, poisoned Stardust with it, turning him into the Stardust. He messed up the garden, caged the piñatas, etc.
He's Professor Pester.
Cedos escaped and lived with his shelly beans. Storkos kept delivering eggs, and Lephos helps the new gardener.
Oh, hello. I was hoping someone would come and help me tidy up this mess.
Oh, and Jadenero's wife hasn't returned ever since. Wow. That's why you don't judge a book by its cover. For me, what makes this game special is the evolution of our garden. We start from scratch and breed a couple piñatas. Then on the next day, we need to overhaul the entire garden to meet the new piñata's requirements. It's like a soft reset. Whenever you think you'll finally settle for a while, it won't last a day, and that's what keeps you going. Despite all of this, Viva Piñata ended up as a commercial failure. As for why, well, let's look at the facts. It was released 2 days after the first Gears of War, one of the defining titles of the 360 era. To put in perspective, it's like releasing a Pixar movie on the same week as Avatar. Gears sold 3 million copies within 10 weeks of its launch, while Viva Piñata only sold 500,000 units in a year. Yikes! Rare blamed Microsoft for the lack of marketing, which shouldn't be a surprise. No one wants to see their work simply ignored after putting in years of work into a single project. From Rare's perspective, I can understand their frustration. However, I think Microsoft knew at the time that no matter how good Viva Piñata was, they weren't going to sell millions of units, so they went with the safer bet. Looking back, it's obvious why. The 360 wasn't marketed as a family-friendly console, since that spot had already been taken by the Wii. Microsoft advertised their console with more realistic, action-oriented games, instead of a colorful gardening game. To put it simply, Viva Piñata was a Wii game on the 360. Thanks, Micro.